I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen didn't make sense at first, like a word you know but haven't said in years. Ethan Clark. I stared at it for a long moment before opening the message. I don't even know if you'll remember me, but you were the only person who ever really knew me. The coffee in my hand suddenly felt heavier. Of course I remembered him. Ethan wasn't just a name from my past. He was my first kiss, my first love, my first heartbreak. Back in high school, we were inseparable, but life, college in different states, family obligations, bad timing, pulled us apart. It had been over 20 years, and now, out of nowhere, there he was. I didn't answer right away. I sat there in the quiet, staring at the message, my mind flipping through old memories like worn-out photographs. The way he used to smell faintly of cedar and mint. The way he'd laugh before he even finished a joke. Finally, I typed back, "Of course I remember you." His reply came instantly, and for the next 3 hours, the world outside disappeared. We started with nostalgia, little details only we would remember. The song that played at our first dance. The night his car broke down in the rain and we ended up sitting on the hood, eating melting ice cream. He remembered everything. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the hook. That's how he pulled me in. Because I was 41 now, recently divorced, living alone in the house I'd inherited from my parents. And it had been a long time since anyone had looked at me like I was the center of their world. By the end of the week, our conversations had shifted from the past to the present. He told me about his failed marriage, a business that hadn't worked out, moving back to the area to start fresh. He told me he'd never gotten over me, that every relationship since had been compared to me, and all had fallen short. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I did believe him. The first time we met in person again, it was raining. We chose a little cafe downtown, the kind with mismatched chairs and fogged-up windows. I walked in, and there he was, older, with faint silver at his temples, lines around his eyes, but still Ethan. When he saw me, he stood. "You look exactly the same," he said, pulling me into a hug that lingered just long enough to feel like more than friendship. We talked for hours. He listened, really listened, leaning in, asking questions, smiling at the right moments. When his hand brushed mine across the table, I didn't pull away. Over the next few weeks, we became something more than just reconnected. Daily texts, phone calls before bed, dinners where he'd bring my favorite tea or a book I'd mentioned once in passing. He told me he was between jobs but had promising leads. I told myself it didn't matter, that I wasn't with him for his money. One night, sitting by the fireplace, he told me he was thinking about moving to my town permanently. I could help around the house, he said casually. Then he asked if I owned it outright. I told him yes, no mortgage, inherited. He smiled and said, "You're lucky." I didn't think much of it then. The first red flag was small. At a diner, when the check came, he patted his pockets and said, "I must have left my wallet at home. I'll get you back." It was $22. I brushed it off. But it happened again. And again. Always small amounts, always with an excuse. Then came the night he arrived with a split lip and a torn shirt. He said he'd been mugged walking home from a job interview, his wallet and phone stolen. I offered to go to the police. He said it wasn't worth it. Instead, he let me make him tea and clean the cut on his lip, telling me how lucky he was to have me. By month 2, he was spending most nights at my place. His jacket on my chair, his toothbrush in my bathroom. It felt like we were building a life together. One evening, over wine, he said, "You know, if we put both our names on the deed, I could help with the property taxes. It would make things easier." It was presented like a practical decision, a team decision, and I didn't shut it down. He didn't bring it up again for another week, But when he did, it was on one of those nights where everything felt warm and right. Music low, dinner still warm on the table, his hand resting over mine. I just want us to be a team, Kate, equal in everything. And I believed him. From then on, he started laying the groundwork. A story here about a friend who lost everything because they weren't on paper together. A comment there about how much easier life would be if we shared everything. The day he suggested meeting a lawyer, I didn't hesitate. I told myself it was just formalizing what was already true, that he was part of my life now. We went to a small office downtown. The lawyer, a man in his 50s, with tired eyes, spoke mostly to Ethan. Paperwork appeared in front of me faster than I could read it. Ethan smiled, reassuring. "This is just to add me on. It won't change your rights." But I didn't sign that day. He noticed. That night, he was distant, quiet. "I thought you trusted me," he said finally. For the next few days, he pulled back. Fewer calls, less warmth. It was deliberate, and it worked. The next time we went, I signed. 2 days later, I got a call from the county clerk's office. They were confirming the change to joint tenancy with right of survivorship, meaning if anything happened to me, Ethan would own the house outright. When I confronted him, he said, "Kate, this is to protect you. If something happens, it won't be tied up in probate. I'm your partner. You can trust me." But when he thought I wasn't looking, I saw it, the slight curl of his lips. Things began to change after that. The daily good mornings disappeared. He was busy more often, and money started disappearing too. First a few hundred from our joint account, then thousands. When I asked, he said, "It's our money now." "Why are you acting like I'm some stranger?" The real blow came in a letter from the bank. Notice of intent to foreclose. Ethan had taken out a line of credit against the house, $80,000. When I asked how he could do that, he didn't even flinch. Because I could. That night, I locked the bedroom door. The next morning, I called Lila. We met at a bakery 2 towns over. She told me I wasn't alone. He'd done this to her, and to at least 2 other women. The pattern was always the same: love bombing, shared assets, financial bleed, then total control. She connected me with a lawyer who specialized in cases like mine. The plan was simple but dangerous. Gather evidence quietly, file for exclusive occupancy, and don't let him suspect until the papers were served. I played the part perfectly. I cooked his favorite meals, I laughed at his jokes, and while he slept, I scanned bank statements, copies of the deed, even emails arranging meetings with real estate agents I'd never heard of. Then I found it, a for sale sign hidden in the garage. That was my line. We served him the next morning. His expression shifted from confusion to anger to calculation. "You think you can beat me?" he said quietly. The retaliation was immediate. He told friends and neighbors that I had scammed him. He sent fake text screenshots to my boss, making it look like I'd admitted to using him for money. Then one night, I came home to find the locks changed and a note taped to the door. "This is my house too. Stay away until you're ready to fix what you broke." The police called it a civil matter. I moved in with Lila and lived out of a suitcase while we waited for the court date. When it came, I walked into the courtroom with my lawyer on one side and Lila on the other. Ethan was already there, dressed like the perfect gentleman, shaking hands with his attorney. But as my lawyer presented the withdrawals, the foreclosure notice, and Lila's testimony, I watched his confidence fade. The judge granted me exclusive occupancy and ordered him to return the keys within 72 hours. When I walked back into my house, it didn't feel like home. His things were gone, but the air still felt heavy. I told myself it was over, until I found the envelope shoved under my door. Inside was a photo. Me, sitting in my living room, taken from outside the window. The police logged it, but there was no proof it was him. Lila told me, He's trying to scare you back into silence. Don't give him that. So, I started reclaiming my space. I painted the walls in colors he would have hated. I replaced furniture he'd chosen. I installed new locks, cameras, and a security system that notified me the second someone stepped on the porch. Weeks passed. Then one morning, I found another envelope in the mailbox. Inside, a single sheet of paper with his handwriting. "You'll never find another me." I laughed when I read it, not because it was funny, but because it was true, and thank God for that. Months later, the civil case ended in my favor. The court ordered him to repay part of what he'd taken, but I'll probably never see a cent. And that's okay, because the real victory was standing in that courtroom, looking at him, and knowing he no longer had the power to smile like he'd won. Sometimes I still glance over my shoulder walking at night, because men like Ethan don't stop. They move on. And somewhere out there, he's already telling his next, first love how she's the only one who ever really knew him. But he won't find me waiting. Not ever again.